Today on the Star Wars Show, Andy heads back to Batuu in The Sims 4. Anthony takes a deeper dive into Star Wars Squadrons, and much, much more. Now, from the safety of their own homes, here's Andy Gutierrez and Anthony Carboni.
Hello and welcome to yet another fun-filled episode of the Star Wars Show, the only Star Wars show that is doing another month of themed content.
That's right, Anthony. This month is all about those sweet, sweet Star Wars video games we love so much.
From the earliest iterations in the arcade to the latest game, Star Wars Squadrons, which is coming out next month, Star Wars video games have been letting you live your Star Wars fantasies for just about 40 years.
Now, last year, you and I got to live out our own Star Wars fantasy inside of Batuu when we did an episode of the show from Star Wars Galaxy's Edge.
That's right, and now, thanks to The Sims 4, you too can travel to Batuu from the comfort of your own home in the latest expansion, Journey to Batuu.
In fact, I got a chance to hang out with Sims 4 lead producer Antonio Romeo inside of the virtual Black Spire Outpost. Check it out. So Star Wars has come to Sims 4, and today I'm joined by lead producer Antonio Romeo to talk a little bit about it. Antonio, tell me what inspired the journey to Batuu?
The Sims team, we're all super huge Star Wars fans over here. When Galaxy's Edge opened up, we had to take it upon ourselves to take a trip to the park, check it out, and really see what it's all about. From our experience, getting a couple glasses of blue and green milk, getting our own lightsabers and droids, we knew it would be a great opportunity to bring that experience to our players in the Sims 4 Journey to Batuu. You know, instead of just talking about it, let's go ahead and jump right in.
Yeah, let's see it.
So, real Andy, I'd like you to meet Sim Andy.
That's so wild.
What do you think?
That's crazy. I've never seen myself in a digital character before. So cool. It's nice to see curly hair in a game. I know that's hard to render.
In Journey to Batuu, we have two brand new aspirations. Hope versus Order, which actually has yourself telling the story between the First Order and the Resistance, or the Galactic Privateer, which has you working with Hondo to earn as many galactic credits as possible. Which one of these do you think Sim Andy would prefer aspiring to be?
Let's do Galactic Privateer.
Perfect. That's sort of after my own heart as well. I definitely enjoy chasing the galactic credits and hanging out with Hondo.
So these aspirations, they don't necessarily dictate your personality, but rather the story that you're playing.
Correct, yeah. So these aspirations are what your sim aspires to eventually do to have a fulfilled life. The thing that shows what your sim's personalities are actually these traits here. So we can see that your sim Andy is good, she's a geek, and she's also cheerful.
That tracks. Well, can we customize my outfit?
Yeah, absolutely. Is there anything that stands out?
Yeah, definitely. I love that these really look like the clothes that you'd see people wearing if you're at Batuu. Oh, that gray vest. I like that. But does it come in black?
Oh, of course. Yes. Look at that. There you go. All right, so we'll switch to the bottoms and see if anything jumps out here.
I like that skirt. Yeah.
Okay.
But make it black.
Oh, of course. Obviously.
Yeah, all black everything.
Should we complete the ensemble? What color shoe options here?
Black boots.
Black boots? All right, perfect. So how do you feel about that, Andy?
It looks just like me.
All right, Andy, it looks like you're all set to go to adventure to Batuu.
Awesome.
Here we are on Batuu. Our team went through painstaking efforts to make sure we delivered the most authentic version of Batuu we could. Let's go ahead and go talk to Hondo and Naka in the cantina.
Yes, please.
We'll go ahead and send your sim in here. And of course, we can see DJ Rex bumping some sweet beats from across the galaxy. We'll go ahead and click on Hondo, and he'll have several legitimate business opportunities for you.
Yeah, hey guy, dance somewhere else.
Here's one of our new missions for Journey to Batuu. It looks like Hondo, in order to trust you, you need to best him in a game of sabacc. Do you think you're up for the challenge?
Let's do it.
All right. You can see Hondo's throwing in a couple chips here, and when we click on the sabacc table, we'll see a couple interactions here.
I mean, if you have the opportunity to cheat at sabacc, I feel like you need to.
I feel like the only way to truly beat Hondo is to play him in his own game.
You know he's cheating.
So it looks like the game's actually wrapping up, and it looks like you were successful.
Yeah.
Good job. After successfully besting Hondo in a game of sabacc, we have enough credits. Let's go ahead and travel to Savi's and request building a lightsaber. Is there a specific color you want in your lightsaber?
Let's go with a green lightsaber.
Green lightsaber? Perfect. So now that I have my lightsaber in my inventory here, I'll be able to click on the kyber crystal and I can place in my lightsaber hilt.
So cool.
It looks like you're just starting out. You just got your lightsaber. You need a little bit of training. What do you say we head to the Resistance camp and see if we could find Rey to maybe help you out?
Yeah, totally.
Here we are. We have Rey. We're just going to introduce ourselves to her really quick. And we're going to go ahead and ask her to help us with some lightsaber training.
Casual, just asking Ray for help.
Looks like you're holding your own pretty well here.
I think she's going easy on me.
She's just training. She has no intentions of showing her true power.
This is way better than I would do, like, if you actually handed me a lightsaber, though, so that's great.
All right, Andy, you must be getting a little parched after a long lightsaber session with Ray.
Yeah, that'd be great. Gotta have a blue milk.
Let's go ahead and head back over to the First Order area. Here we are, the blue milk stand. What's your favorite? Do you like blue or green?
I like the blue.
When I went to Galaxy's Edge, one of my favorite things to do was I mixed the two.
Yeah, I liked them both, but I guess I'm just like a classic blue milk kind of gal.
That's fair, that's fair.
So this has already been a very full day at Batuu, but we have not visited the Falcon yet, and you have to visit the Falcon when you're in Batuu.
Oh, of course. Let's go ahead and end our day on that.
There she is. I mean, is there anything better to end your day in Batuu on than hanging out at the Millennium Falcon?
I don't think so. I think this is definitely my favorite spot.
Antonio, thank you so much for showing me around Batuu. The experience playing it is exactly like being there, so it's really interesting to see how it translates, and it honestly transports you just the same way as if you actually visited the world itself. So thank you so much.
Awesome. Thank you so much, everyone.
That was great, Andy. You know, the only thing missing to make it like our trip to Batuu was like a little Sims Paul Scheer to cause a ruckus everywhere he went.
That's why we can only visit the park under strict adult supervision now.
Thanks,
Paul.
Anyway, like we mentioned at the top of the show, Star Wars has a nearly 40-year history of video games.
Over 30 of which are space combat simulators.
So before you strap in to experience Star Wars Squadrons for yourself, let's take a look back at the history of Star Wars space combat simulators in this segment we call The History of Star Wars Space Combat Simulators.
Perfect. Nailed it.
You know, we're all just doing what we can in 2020, you know what I'm saying?
A long timeline ago. This is the history of Star Wars spaceflight simulators. Star Wars has had a nearly 40-year history with video games. From the earliest releases of The Empire Strikes Back on the Atari 2600 in 1982 to the latest release, Star Wars Squadrons, coming to Xbox One, PS4, and PC next month. And while there have been over 150 different Star Wars video games for various platforms over the years, we're focusing on the dozens of titles that let you step into the cockpit of a starfighter. However, while flying levels have always been a part of Star Wars games, we're focusing on the ones that primarily revolved around flying, which means we won't be touching on racers or expansion packs for ground-based games, like Battlefront 2's Starfighter Assault or the Old Republic's Galactic Starfighter. With the release of Star Wars Return of the Jedi in 1983, Star Wars decided to dip its toes into this newfangled video game fad the same year with the arcade hit Star Wars. Using vector-based graphics similar to what the United States military had been using in their own simulators, the Star Wars arcade game puts you in the cockpit of Luke's X-Wing as you fly through 3 different levels in your mission to blow up the Death Star. And while more games followed over the years, the next time you would get a true flying sim was 2 years later in 1985 with the sequel arcade game The Empire Strikes Back. It would be nearly 6 years before another cockpit-based sim would be released in Star Wars Attack on the Death Star, which mimicked the vector graphics of the arcade game for home PCs. Then, in 1993, everything changed. Following Sega's 32X release of the reimagined Star Wars arcade game, LucasArts released a genre-defining hit with Star Wars X-Wing. The game gave you complete control of the ship, for the first time letting you fly in 3D space without the constraint of a predetermined path of the previous arcade games. 2 expansion packs followed, leading to the new game Star Wars Rebel Assault, an on-rail shooter that puts you in the shoes of Rookie One, a hotshot X-Wing pilot who has a very similar backstory to Luke Skywalker. 1994 brought us the sequel to X-Wing, TIE Fighter, letting you get a taste for the Empire's side in these endless Star Wars, with 95 bringing us the sequel, Rebel Assault 2, The Hidden Empire. 1997 rounded out the X-Wing TIE Fighter trilogy with X-Wing vs. TIE Fighter, now with multiplayer. In 1998, the world was waiting for the first new Star Wars film, The Phantom Menace. But in the meantime, we got Star Wars Rogue Squadron for the Nintendo 64. Cool thing about this game is that the Naboo starfighter was hidden in the code and unlockable with a password when the game shipped, 3 full days before the first trailer for The Phantom Menace was released in theaters. Crazy part is the ship stayed hidden and unfound in the code until the developer released the cheat code, after the movie was released in theaters. 1999 saw the release of X-Wing Alliance, the quasi-sequel to TIE Fighter and X-Wing vs. TIE Fighter, including a Shadows of the Empire mission where you assist pouch enthusiast Dash Rendar. Because late 90s Star Wars. Battle for Naboo lets you get behind the controls of a Naboo starfighter without a cheat code on the N64 in 2001, as well as Star Wars Starfighter, a prequel-era spaceflight sim, closing out the year with Rogue Squadron 2, Rogue Leader on GameCube, and Jedi Starfighter, the sequel to Starfighter. In 2003, if you needed a flying fix on the go, you could play Flight of the Falcon on Game Boy Advance, and that same year saw the third and final game in the Rogue Squadron trilogy, Rebel Strike. It would be nearly 13 years before we got a fully dedicated flying game, when Star Wars Battle Pod was released in arcades in 2015. Now, 5 years later, we're finally getting a brand new spaceflight combat game, Star Wars Squadrons, where you can once again jump into ship cockpits of both the New Republic and Empire, living out your own fighter pilot fantasy, complete with Ewok bobbleheads. Want to learn more about Star Wars Squadrons? Well then you're in luck, because Anthony Carboni is about to chat with the game's creative director, Ian Fraser. Take it away, Anthony.
Ian, thank you for being here.
Hey, good to be here.
Oh my goodness, I am so excited to talk Squadrons. I have played a good chunk of the game, a few hours of the game now, and I absolutely loved it. First of all, making a game like Squadrons, there's such a pedigree in Star Wars games of flight games, of getting behind the cockpit of these ships. What do you think makes a good Star Wars flight combat game? What needs to be there?
That's a good question. I mean, I think there's a lot of things. We've been working on the game for a long time and asking that question regularly. I think for me, looking back at the ones I played as a kid and loved, it was the Star Wars flight games that made that part of the universe real. Like, it didn't feel like it was a toy that you were controlling, but no, an X-Wing is a very real ship that was manufactured by Incom, and these buttons all do something, and really made that part of the universe feel like something you could really physically sit in and interact with and control at that level, like the way we imagine a real pilot doing. And we've tried to do that with Squadrons, to have that level of kind of depth and that tactile sense the way that the game plays. Another big thing, and again, this is true for some of the older games and true for us, is going back to the heritage of the films. George Lucas made, especially the first Star Wars, he was looking at World War II aerial footage, and the ships, they don't move like ships would in real space. They move like ships would move in World War II, or closer to it anyway. And we try to stay true to that feeling of quasi-atmospheric flight, the way that you'd see in the movies. The things you do feel like, whether it's from the classic trilogy or the prequels or the new ones, it feels like stuff that you would see in a Star Wars movie.
I mean, every ship has this different feeling of weight, of drag, of control that I really enjoyed. But, when you're talking about giving every ship its own feeling, I want to talk about the way the ships control and the systems, because that has a lot to do with it. You added these different systems that you can add and remove power to that really give every ship its own kind of character and feeling. Can you talk a little bit about that and what you kind of wanted to add with the power systems?
Yeah. So the power management system, the core of it is the same across every ship. So you don't have to relearn it across every ship. And it's basically you have your engines, your weapons, and if the ship has them, shields. And you can shunt energy rapidly between those different areas. And what's cool is that it gives you kind of a layer of tactical control beyond just the pure flying, aiming, and targeting in the moment to moment to separate the player who's starting out from the player who's really, really good. This is a game where you have complete control of the ship in 3D space. So even learning just the basics can take you a little bit of time. You experience that yourself playing. I'd say most people need about an hour to fully kind of grok the basic experience, but we don't want you to be done in an hour. We want you to have that long tail of learning and growing and always finding ways to do things a little bit better. And the power management system is part of how we do that. One of the things I love that some of our better players start to get into, we kind of internally call micro drift. So you've got your booster fully charged, you go fast, you cut it, you make a slight course correction while drifting, boost little tiny distance, do it again. So you're just zigzagging like a maniac. Generally, only the really good pilots who are on an interceptor that have more of a kind of a tank for a boost can pull that off. But it's awesome when they do.
I saw somebody pull that off. I saw it in the mining colony because you have all these beams that you're trying to get through. And I was chasing somebody down, and man, they were just darting through everything. It is wonderful to see, and one of the things that I love about how much of this game is multiplayer-based, squadron-based, is it's fun to squad up with your friends, but it's really wonderful to see other players that you're unfamiliar with and see things that they're pulling off.
Yeah.
It's such a great way to learn through observing and learn through playing. I want to talk about some of this squad-based play and kind of how you balance something like that, because obviously the majority of people, y'all have done your research, the majority of people want to jump in and they want to be an X-Wing or they want to be a TIE fighter, right?
Mm-hmm.
So how do you entice people to try out the other ships? How do you balance out these squadrons as people are jumping in?
It's a good question. So what we've tried to do is, like you said, we knew that the majority of people, from familiarity with the films, just kind of that central fantasy, were going to gravitate toward the X-Wing and the TIE fighter. And that's fine. And
You sound so like, That's fine.
Don't accept it. No, but it's a reality, right?
Yeah.
They're going to do. I can't stop them. They're going to do it. So we're like, okay, how do we make that a good thing for us instead of like, oh, it's a bad thing? So we make that good, but not good at everything. So it's like, okay, if you want to just hop in and fly an X-Wing, cool. You're going to have a good time. You can do different things team-wise. But if you want to start really excelling as a team, now you're going to want to start trying the different ships and really excelling at different things and having your team divide up your forces. Like we find internally in our team play tests, it's usually good to have one or two people who are in an X-Wing or a TIE fighter because they're flexible. But then it's having someone like dedicated in an interceptor, especially one of your better players who's really good at hunting down the best players in the other team, super valuable. Having that dedicated support ship, more so in fleet battles, but even in dogfights, that's huge. You may have seen that playing.
So obviously we've been talking a lot about the multiplayer and all the fun that you can have with your friends and the way the ships feel and all of that, but this is also a Star Wars game. It's set in the Star Wars universe. Can you tell us a little bit about the story and kind of where this all fits and why a Star Wars fan is going to want to hear this story?
A big inspiration for me, for this game in general, and especially for the campaign, is the original X-Wing and TIE Fighter, the single-player stories of those games. I love both of those games, and they both leaned real hard into their specific fantasies. Like, if you play TIE Fighter, you are Imperial. The end, like all the way through. So I want to make sure to get both of those fantasies fully represented in this game. So we're going to do that. We're going to get both of those things for the story so the people that really want to have that Rebel fantasy can, and people want to have the Imperial fantasy can. And we're going to tell a story that weaves those together so it doesn't feel like just kind of two throw-in things. It's a story that is meaningfully represented from those perspectives. As far as how we did it, the original story concept was from our writer, Joanna Berry. She did an amazing job with that. And of course, we work very closely with the story team at Lucasfilm. We talk a lot about what makes sense, what everybody doing. So I don't want to get too spoilery, but I will tell you a little bit. The game starts with a prologue. And the prologue takes place right after Alderaan's been blown up. And so it kind of sets the stakes for the rest of the story. And the bulk of the story takes place a few months after the Battle of Endor. And what's really cool about it is, first, it's a time period that fans aren't as familiar with as a rule, like that time right after Return of the Jedi. And second, it answers some questions around how we got from here to there. Like, this is a time period where, the rebels, Emperor's dead, the Death Star 2's been blown up. They have real momentum at this point. They're planting the flag and becoming the new Republic and saying, this is happening. At the same time, the Empire is not gone. They may have lost their leader. They're starting to fracture, but they have a lot of stuff. They have the ships and the armies and the fleets and so on. And so it's a really unique point in Star Wars history where, for different reasons, either faction conceivably could win and ultimately rule the galaxy. And so it lets us tell a really neat story that answers how that plays out, and a pretty important military campaign that's going to get you from Return of the Jedi to the Battle of Jakku.
One thing that I think is really wonderful about the campaign, or about just the creating your own character, is the flair in your cockpit, which is something that I really want to talk about, because I'm thinking back and I'm like, have I seen flair in a Star Wars pilot's cockpit before? And I don't know that I have. And so how did you decide to put that flair? I mean, obviously it comes from all of these movies that we've seen where everybody has their good luck charm, but how did you decide what kind of flair and how much there would be? Because some of this stuff is really fun.
Yeah. So, the sabacc dice that Han had is one inspiration. That's like the one example from the films that I would point to, but he's not the fighter pilot, right? It's a different kind of thing than being in the X-Wing or the TIE. But like you said, we're inspired by real life pilots that had, the picture of their loved one or whatever in the cockpit. And we just, early on, we said, you're in the cockpit all the time. In a way, your cockpit's like the hero of the game. So we want to give you a way to decorate that and customize that and make it your own, especially the dashboard stuff, like the physical stuff you sit there, like the bobbleheads. You can't not love it. Like, one of our earliest pitches for the game, like, PowerPoint before there was code, was like, here's my X-Wing and there's my Ewok.
Right.
You look at that picture like, well, I want that. Whatever you're doing, I want that.
I love that this game has brought bobbleheads officially into the Star Wars galaxy. That's amazing.
Well, what's awesome is we haven't shown them all yet. We had a bunch that you saw in that previous build. There's more that we've added since then. So when the game goes live, I'm really excited to see people kind of collect them all. You have the whole set of like, how do I make each individual ship have its own flavor?
I love that. And obviously something that was not part of the preview event and people have not seen yet would be the stick and throttle control, and also the VR editions. How are those coming along, and what kind of surprises can we expect from that stuff?
Yeah, so actually developing the game, we always knew that realistically, the majority of the audience is going to play on a traditional display, TV or a monitor, and they're going to play with the controller or a mouse and keyboard. And so we've always wanted to make sure that that's a really solid, great experience. Everything else, the VR and the HOTAS controls and so on, which, if you don't know, that's the hands-on throttle and stick, we love. And that's an extra layer of kind of frosting on top. It's something that, if you want the most immersive experience and you have the hardware for it, could be pretty amazing. You could play the whole thing on any of the platforms with HOTAS controls, and on both PC and PS4, we support that VR. Do you need it? No, but if you've got it, it's a really cool add to the experience. I like to think that Star Wars Squadrons is the most advanced, most immersive space combat game we've ever had in Star Wars. We've created a game where you can play through a whole new story and see kind of both factions' perspectives over the course of that story in a time period that not as many people know about, and that's awesome. It's a game where you can play with your friends, either cooperatively against bots or competitively, and climb the rankings and earn rewards for doing that. It's a game where you're going to really feel like a pilot and actually be there and control these ships with a layer of kind of control and depth that I think people are going to really, really like.
Ian, thank you so much. I am looking forward to playing Squadrons in October. Thank you for your time.
Awesome. Thank you.
You're watching the Star Wars show.
You know, Anthony, that interview got me thinking.
Yeah, right? Like about how you want to fully invest in a water-cooled PC with a giant wraparound monitor, flight stick, and pedal controls?
No, that I want desktop flair like in Squadrons. How many times do we have to beg for some Kitster tchotchkes?
Right? Like right up on your dashboard, you could have a little, instead of Maneki Neko, a Kitster, and instead of waving, he's just whiffing high fives.
Or a Star Tours teak bobbing his head back and forth because he successfully buckled his safety belt.
Ah, perfect. You know what I want?
What's that?
A Babu Frick hula dancer. He's already wearing the skirt. All he has to do is shake them tiny hips to the gyrations of the vehicle.
Hey! And that's our show for the month.
Remember to like the video, subscribe to the channel, follow us on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram.
Thanks for watching, and may the Force be with you.
Hey!
Hey!